But I will let you know that Carl and I have been through this journey for the last couple years, so I've been deeply involved with it. We do share the same passion from what we're doing on the DevOps side within Dell. And I know you heard many times that Laura was up here earlier talking about Dell. We are not just a hardware company. Yes, we have great hardware, and most of you guys do and have used it. And we heard a lot of times in our booth that people come up, oh, I love your laptop, or I need to get a new one. That's great. Keep buying our laptops. Those are good. But we also have a very strong development culture in Dell. And because of that, we're looking at DevOps as kind of the key of helping to drive that. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to talk about what our journey was. Some of you guys are in smaller, all different size companies, some small, some big. We're obviously, Dell's a fairly large company, so we have to manage a whole lot more engineers who all have their same different mindset, and also bringing in more cultures that we kind of acquire. That's where this one comes in. You can look at this even back looking at what Dell EMC had been. We started off as Data General, and then EMC came along, acquired Data General, and then Dell came along, acquired EMC. And that's just those three pieces. And now you look at each of those with their own acquisitions throughout their own processes, their own product lines, and their own way of doing things. And they all thought that, some have love-hate relationships with what their process was, but they were bought into what they were doing. And it's hard to make that adjustment on and changing the behavior of how people are doing their development and releasing. So the challenge that we did have, ISG was kind of foreign when Dell acquired EMC. You had roughly about 12,000 engineers, small drop in the bucket. The amount of product lines we had, and even the processes within those product lines, there were a bunch of different things coming in. Each started off independently. They were all on their own little platforms. They're all, their pipelines were all different. And like I said, they liked them, they may have hated them, but processes, everything was different. So the results of what we came from that, looking at that, is that we had a ton of duplication of effort. A lot of people were working on the same thing, inventing the wheel in different silos, and that's the first challenge. And then you had the knowledge was spread across teams. So you might have had two people. One group might be trying to discover new techniques and technologies, while another team may have already mastered it. But there was no relationship between those, so we had no idea what was going on between the two. So we were basically building out that Tower of Babel. It's getting way too big, but not only that, you had the language barriers, right? People weren't talking, weren't communicating with each other. Maybe we were even using different languages for developing it. Maybe Python, Java, even some was using Perl. Right? So trying to get that all together and making sure that everybody was working together. So the first thing we try to look at is the tool sets we had. Maybe start with something simple, looking at the industry leading tools that we had out there. There's Jira, there's Artifactory, GitHub. So how can we bring everybody together those? A lot of those organizations are already using those. A lot of people were in GitHub, but they're maybe on a different instance of GitHub. Lots were using Jira, again, different instance. It's hard to manage the project. We had relationships between the two. How can you relate one instance of Jira with the other? It's really hard to kind of track those, the stories you want to do that do tie into each other. So bringing those all in. So we did migrate about 1,400 different tools that way, just making sure you're all on the same platform. And that was a big accomplishment there, because now people are starting to communicate. And you can have more visibility of what they're doing. And through this process, we never wanted to have that iron fist approach, right? Because DevOps, what works for one team may not work for another, but it's all that process. We want to make sure everybody was able to contribute to that and have a voice in that. It wasn't coming in and saying, you must do this or you must do that. It was like, what works for you? What works for the other team? Let's bring it together so that we do have a common, that common good to try to get that software released. So once we had the tool sets there, and also in the tool set, we also looked beyond the industry-leading tools. We also had a lot of in-house developed tools that did a specific task on a specific product, but that may have benefited another. So we didn't want to have two teams within Dell developing an in-house tool as well that was doing essentially the same thing. So once we had those tools, what was the next step? Next step obviously was communication. We wanted to make sure that everybody knew what we were doing before, during, and after that was happening. Again, we don't want to surprise people and say, hey, you must do it this way. We wanted to get their input early so that we knew what they needed, what were their headaches that they had, what are the points that they loved about what they had, what made their life easier, and wanted to make their life easier as they went forward. So it was really, share. Everybody share. And it's not only the tools to share, but also the processes. So that's the best way that we were able to get people to buy in for the changes we were making. And then we come to culture. Culture, you've heard that many times in many of the talks today. You all know the CALMS acronym, which I know we talked about no acronyms, but that's another acronym. It's a good one. Culture is number one, right? It's not because it's the most important, but it must start there, right? You must have that culture to make this work, right? Again, sharing is caring. You want to, what is the culture in the DevOps, right? That's, shared understanding of your developers and your operations, and it's sharing that responsibility for that. So we definitely wanted to make sure everybody had a voice. We do a great job at Dell. We're using Slack pretty extensively. We have tons of channels, and we're meeting ups within the company and within the organization to make sure we're hearing everybody's voice, and we encourage people to talk. So there's plenty of channels for people to give their input on what we want to do or what we need to do. So that's where we're looking through. You got the agile CI/CD pipelines and DevOps. It all should be flexible, and they are, and they need to be a team effort. So and what we also need is not only us coming out and saying, hey, this is the best practice you need to do, but we need to have the mindsets from the right levels. So obviously the executive support, which we definitely have at Dell. You look at a Jeff Clark level, he's very passionate about this, and he wants to see this work. So we have that top-down support on this, and when we come up with that, what we want to accomplish here, we know we can present it to them and get their back on that. So that definitely is a huge first step, right? So everybody is on the same page and it's at the right level. And you want to make sure you have that core of the leadership and the thought process that can help you to get through those, to help you find the best solutions and work with the team. And obviously the good tools, you have to have the tools to do it. If you're throwing a tool out there that doesn't quite get you everything you want, but just enough, it's just that's what it's gonna do in your process. It's gonna get you just far enough and not as far as you want to go. And training is very, very important, not only to let people as new teams come in or even new developers come in and telling them, hey, this is what we're doing, this is how we want to do it, and learn from them, but continue that, because what works today may not be the right solution for tomorrow. So it's a constantly evolving, not only with what we're doing, but what we want to do. And again, going down to communication, have to train them, have to continue the continuous training on that. And you look at the disciplines, it's not a recipe, it is a mindset. You have to get everybody on the same board or on the same page with that. Let's see, I don't know if I'm going too fast. Platform. And I think Laura said it as well earlier. She doesn't believe in that if you build it, they will come. To an extent, yeah, they won't. But if you build it without listening, then they definitely won't come, right? Because you're just building something that you think is right. And it might be, but you don't get the input from all the key developers and the people using that you don't know, is this the right way to do it? So definitely, I know I mentioned many times, that you want to listen, communicate, keep that going. Look at the 3 buckets. We look at that bucket 3. First bucket, is really that new feature and development. This is, what a developer experiences when their daily life, right? They're either working on the new feature development, which is great, technical debt, which includes the bugs, right? We all have technical debt. We'd all try to reduce it, but it's going to be there. It's kind of job security, right? And then everything else is all those annoying bits that, what you need to deal with the rest of the day, right? Is the network down? Am I not able to access GitHub or whatever it is that's bugging you? So we definitely want to keep that bucket 3 down, and we want to keep that out of the mind of our developers, right? The last thing we want to do is come in and say, hey, I can't get to Artifactor, I can't get to Jira, I can't do my work, or I can't get to my dev VM, whatever it is that they're working on. So if we can reduce that or eliminate that, then that's going to help them to work more effective and make sure that they are getting their work done and worried about what they need to do, which is working on the first 2 buckets. Hopefully more on bucket 1, and then keeping that bucket 2 down. And I kind of, the joke here is that this is the way, right? But this is the way that we don't want it to be a mandate. So not like, hey, this is the way, fist down. It's more, this is the way that we as a team have developed and established as the key way to get things done. Okay, so what is in it for us as we're scaling this out and getting more and more teams into this? Obviously, it benefits the engineers. We're using industry-leading technologies and tools, going out to see what's out there and continuously to involve in that, but also working on those tools in-house and the processes in-house and getting those working. It's also an easy way to, question? For the win? Yeah, so even within Dell, we don't want to, so changing roles within ISG and Dell. We have a lot of different products, a lot of different things working on. If we need to get more kind of the swarming thing to get people to work on what is most important for Dell, what we need to release, is there a high priority item we need to work on, it allows us to shift those engineers easier because they know the process, they know the tools, they know the technology. It's just really easy to go from one to the other, and they can really focus on that, learning those technologies and know how they work. They don't have to worry about the process as much. And there's, everybody can contribute. We want everybody to contribute. It's across all team boundaries. It's not, hey, this team does it this way, this team does it that way. We're all working together. We're all experiencing what works, what doesn't work, and hopefully continue to evolve that and make it better. And then within Dell, right, we don't want to have so many tools to support, right? We have a lot of times, when we first started this, we saw tool X and tool Y essentially doing the same thing, or set up differently, or maybe they were even using it incorrectly. We maybe were using Artifactory wrong in one group, and the other group was using it the right way. So we were able to see what were the best practices on using those and consolidate that all together and collaborate. The ramp-up times for the teams to get started, get going, if we have new products starting up, that ramp time was way sooner than it was before, right? Because you didn't have to relearn everything as you shifted from one to the other. So everybody was on the same page, and it definitely helped in that way. And yes, a win-win for the win. Lots of wins. Some of the tips, some of the things we learned in there. Obviously, changing mindset is hard. I talked about earlier, people do come in, that, those teams have a process that, for right or wrong reasons, it works for them. They don't want to change it. Why do they want to change? And you look at the J-curve type thing where, yeah, you make a change, it might be good at first, and then it looks bad, and it will be better at the end. So trying to convince that, yeah, you might take a step back here for a while, but in the long run, you will be ahead of the game, and you will be able to get things accomplished a lot quicker and more efficiently. So that mindset is the hardest thing. It's hard to convince that, but working with them, making sure they do have a voice is definitely going to help with that. Over-communicate, I can't say that more. You definitely, before, during, after, I mentioned it, that's key. Make sure everybody is attuned to what's going on, know what they're going to expect and when they're going to expect it. The last thing you do, and usually what we get the biggest response from people is like, we make a change, nobody tells us, and now it changes all there. They might have scripting or something else that is affected by that. We just make sure everybody is on the same page and knows what's coming down that pipeline. Understanding those use cases, what is everybody doing? What, again, works for one team might not work for another, but if you understand those use cases and you can come up with a common solution for both, great. But if you need to make adjustments that say, okay, here's a specific use case that we need to handle, how are we going to do that? And how are we going to support that, right? Using that team to help with that support may help in that areas. And yeah, software development, it is a team sport. We're all working together. Teamwork helps the dream work. So you want to make sure that everybody is on the same page, working towards the same goal, and have the same tools to get that done. Some of the future things we're looking at. Obviously, we want to reduce that bucket 3. If we can eliminate it, that's great, but that's the key. We want to make sure that that bucket 3, like I talked about networking, if that goes down, how can we make sure that the network goes up? How can we make sure our tools are accessible when you need it? So the last thing we want We don't want a developer to put their code through that pipeline, want them to get that build, and the builds are down, or the build servers are down, or something else is wrong. So you want to make sure that that bucket 3 is eliminated or reduced. That common developer workflow, everybody knows what needs to be done. They all can help with contributing to that, and it's going from one group to another. You know what that workflow is going to look like. More services. Yeah, you can look at more services might be bad, but we want to make sure that the services we do have meets that goal, what they need. So that's the service, and we continually evolve. We're always communicating. We're always learning from what we're doing. You look at the agile transformation we're doing, especially, there's retros in there. We're talking all the time, what worked, what didn't work. And we don't just take that, what didn't work, and say, okay, great, thanks for letting me know, let's move on. No, we take that and we try to make action items out of that so that we do continue to improve to make it easier for the life of our developers. I might have been way fast, but that's all I had. So, any questions?
Thank you so much. Any questions? Oh, all the way in the back, making me run today. Was there a question up here as well? All right. Okay.
Bucket 3.
You want to go back to the bucket 3?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's 3 buckets in what your daily life is as a developer. You're either working on new features, you're working on your technical debt, which includes bugs, or the everything else, which is all the annoying things. You talk about, like, you come in the morning and you can't get onto your dev VM, or you can't get on to Jira to see what your stories are and update those, or you can't get to GitHub.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, we have another question here.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. So I'm with IQVIA, Ajay Patel. So I lead global enterprise DevOps. We're about a 100,000 employee company. So we're going through a similar effort. We've established it several years ago. And so question for you here is that in our organization, we have product leaders that are responsible for a P&L, essentially. Mm-hmm. So they've got a portfolio of products, and we have a DevOps platform, like you mentioned here, as well. And so part of this is to influence those leaders why it's beneficial to onboard their products onto this DevOps platform. Now, I just want to ask you, how did you convince those leaders that are more their objectives around increasing revenue, reducing cost?
Yeah, and that's a good question, and that's a key point, right? So you don't really want to jump in all at once, right? Because that's the hardest thing, is convincing everybody, hey, this works. So one of the main things you want to do is maybe start with a small group first, right? So you have a couple of teams that are coming in, they want to do some kind of transformation on what their process is. Work with them, show that it does work, have that success story. And then from there, then you can start working on other teams that might be more interested. And then start with those that have that interest level as high. And eventually it does have a domino effect where people see that, hey, it's working for them, they're releasing code quicker, it's higher quality, and they're having less issues with getting that code released. So as you get those success stories, that does help you to then present it to other teams or other groups, or to say, hey, this is what's been working, and to get their feedback. And that's the key too, is making sure that they know they're part of the solution. They're not just the consumers of it. We do have the concept of, we look at developers as partners, not necessarily customers. Customers, that's a person that's like, you're going to tell me what to do. Okay, we're going to do it. Partners, they're going to say, here's what I need. Let's work together to find the right solution for your needs, to meet your needs. Okay. Any other questions?
All righty. Let's have another round of applause for Dick.
Thank you.